Hey everybody, I'm Josh Sinn. I'm a Baltimore photographer who's been shooting photos of the city for the last 11 years or so. I'm also a high school photography teacher and have loved teaching for the last 5 years. Today I'm going to be showing you a little bit of my work process on shooting the space around me and getting in touch with the city a little bit more, and hopefully you can do the same. The photos I'm showing you right now all came from my cell phone. I grew up with the mindset that you don't need a big expensive digital camera or an artsy film camera to take good images. You really just need a good eye or the time to put into working on photography. So I think that the cell phone has been such a great tool for people because it's accessible, you can fit it in your pocket, it's light, it's versatile, and they make better and better cameras every single year. So, I don't really worry too much about having some of the big, more professional cameras that I have when I'm out and about because I know at least I have my cell phone. Now, one thing that I use photography for is kind of like a journal or what writing would be for somebody. It's a way to put things that I see or witness into some sort of context and make it uh, sort of mine. I look at the world happening as this stage that people put forth their performances, and how do we really take in what we're seeing. Now, one of the things that really draws me into why I shoot photography, and it's specifically why I shoot the photography that I do, is my interest in humanity. People interest me so much in so many different ways, whether it's through the actual acts that they do, what they've created, what they didn't do, how people feel. So it's very interesting to see how we operate as humans within this space of ours. So I like to try and capture that in as many different ways as I can, whether it be by cell phone or more professional cameras. Culture and events is another thing that really interests me with my photography. I feel like I become more interested in things that I normally wouldn't be because of photography. I also find things that are funny to be a constant source of inspiration for my work. Stuff that you don't see every day, stuff that is a bit puzzling or almost seems unreal sometimes. I do use my cell phone all the time and I always have it with me, but sometimes it functions more like a sketchbook, something a little less permanent. I have this fear that my digital stuff could just kind of wisp away one day if my computer was to crash or something else. So, a lot of the times I'll have a film camera with me. And the work that I'm showing you right now is all from one of my medium format cameras. So what medium format is just a larger form of film than the 35 millimeter film that maybe some of us are used to, especially some of the older crowd. Um, and it feels more permanent to me. It feels more like the final image, the final form I want this to take. So the specific medium format camera that I'm using is called a twin lens reflex, which basically means it has two lenses. Kind of the old-fashioned camera that we tend to see in movies and stuff like that. And I love using it not only for the function of it, but people warm up to it. People tend to ask me questions, they come up to me, and I really use that to my advantage because I want people to feel comfortable, especially because I'm such a big portrait taker. Um, it's a great camera just to sling around your shoulder and shoot landscapes and portraits. I do a lot of nighttime stuff as well, and it's just kind of a very basic camera, not too many bells and whistles. So, we're going to go on a walk today to show you how I typically go about my processes in shooting photos, how I compose things, how I deal with certain situations, how I interact with the space. I'm going to be primarily using my cell phone today. I do have that twin lens reflex around my shoulder that I told you about earlier. Also, just to kind of help with the understanding of what I'm doing. I'm wearing a little point of view camera just so you can see what I'm seeing. Also, want to make sure that this is a safe walk. I'm keeping my distance from people, I'm wearing my mask. Normally, I'd be talking to a ton of people, trying to see as many people as I can on the street. I love taking portraits and meeting new people, but just got to understand that with the position that we're in, got to play it safe. So we're coming up on the first thing that I saw on the walk. Got somebody's American flag waving in the wind. The thing I noticed about it first were the really faded red stripes, paired with the really bright rosy flowers down below. I thought it was just really interesting how kind of overpowering that was over the flag, which normally is something that we notice right away. And down the street a little bit at their neighbors, I saw that they had a little art piece in the window, a little well wishing with two rats. I love the way that the yellow complemented the blue on the wall, so I wanted to make sure to keep that in there. And I tried a few different compositions horizontally and vertically, just because you never know which one you might end up liking better. I'd like to give myself some options. And, I had to get down on the ground a little bit. You gotta risk it for the art sometimes. And coming up here, I noticed a little pink scarf in the tree. Thought it was interesting. Another kind of complementary pink and green. Those colors really going together in an interesting way. So I played around with the composition just a little bit, just to get what I wanted. So a lot of the times on my walks, I'm looking all over the place. I'm looking up, I'm looking down, left, right, peering around corners that I've already passed, retracing my steps sometimes. Sometimes I'll even stay in one corner or just a certain space that I really like the light and maybe I like the scene a little bit, and I'm hoping that something comes through like a person or a car or something and makes the space a little bit better. So as we're walking here, I noticed the little kind of carnival-esque facing hole thing, and I really found it interesting. I love the colors on it. Took my picture, and as I'm walking, then I noticed a pug sitting there in the doorway. So I started taking more pictures. Sometimes your first picture might be really good, and then your second picture might be even better. So just kind of keeping that eye open because you never know when something might happen or you might notice something different. Now, I got to understand when I'm out shooting, not everything's going to be great. Not everything's going to turn out the way that I kind of envisioned it or even saw it right in front of me. Sometimes the picture isn't as fascinating as what you saw. So, unless you have like a space issue or if you're working with film and you have restrictions, shoot as much as you can because, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. So today was actually kind of a sunny day, which I think a lot of people just assume might be the better day to shoot. But I actually like cloudy days. There's a lot less highlights and shadows to balance. You don't have to worry about something being too bright or too dark. So I actually kind of prefer working with a cloudier day. But sometimes you just got to get out of the house on these nice days. So one thing that I've noticed during quarantine are the church signs are really witty and funny and positive, and I've been collecting a lot of them in photos. So walking by this one, I took a look on the other side, and there was another good one. the tomb is empty, but your house shouldn't be. So I just kind of appreciate the humor in that and the well wishing. So wanted to take a quick photo. So I will usually do this walk a couple times a week, if not more. And it doesn't really get old. I notice new things. I notice different things, things that change. Baltimore is an ever changing city. So things are happening and things are disappearing. So never feel like just because you're doing the same walk and the same route that you're not going to get something different. You'll run into different things and experience new things. So um, as many times as I do this, it will never get old for me. So as I'm walking down the sidewalk along this fence on the cemetery, I'm noticing a lot of vines and branches and stuff interwoven in the chain link fence with the tombstones in the back, and they all create this really cool texture that comes together. And I just thought that was really interesting, and there was a lot to work with. So I took a number of photos just to see, what might be the most interesting. I'm moving around, moving the camera around, seeing maybe if I could line up a branch or a vine with a certain row of tombstones. Then down the street a little bit, I'm noticing some spray paint on this Mini Cooper. And I'm like, oh, what's the deal? And then I see more on the house and see some cans there. Looks like someone had a little bit of fun. So, it's just not something you see every single day. And as I'm taking it, I'm thinking, maybe this is worth a shot with the medium format camera. So, something a little bit more permanent. So I'm focusing up, I'm taking my light meter reading just to get a good shot and, continue on my way. So while I was on the walk, people do like to talk and they see the camera, they ask questions, and I enjoy telling people what I'm doing. I took a few portraits of people on this walk, and as long as it's at a safe distance and we're both conscious of health, I'm not opposed to it. So I think, it's kind of a healthy thing to keep in mind that we do need the social interaction sometimes. It can be really hard lately, but it's something that I do look forward to in my walks. I love meeting new people. And this whole pandemic has kind of made us reevaluate how we do things. And, just got to stay conscious and stay safe. I've learned a lot about this city and the people in it through these walks just by meeting and talking to people, hearing their stories, hearing their history within Baltimore. I think that's what I end up cherishing the most, meeting new people, even more than the work sometimes. As much as I love making work, it, there's no comparison to meeting someone new and being able to connect with them on a significant level. So we're going back to where we started, going back the same way because, like I mentioned before, you never know what you might see different the second time around. You might have missed something that was there 5 minutes earlier, or you might miss it again if it was 5 minutes after you came through. So it's always worth going through the same place, and you never know what you might see. So here's the last shot that I took on the walk. Another sign, little humor behind it, but just a friendly reminder to stay safe, stay healthy from Salvation Army. So I just like collecting these signs. I hope seeing my work and seeing a little bit of my process has helped encourage you to get out and try this on your own. I think that we have the power to tell our own story and tell the story of our space, our history, our friends, our family, and, tell a little bit about ourselves. Whether it's something that makes you laugh, makes you cry, things that interest you. I'm not much of a writer, so I use the camera to do the writing for me. And maybe you can do the same if you feel the same. Maybe the work that you create is something that you want to show friends and family or show off in a larger form. Or maybe it's something that you just keep to yourself, and just knowing that you have it and you've created it is good enough. There is no rules to this. So just do it however you feel comfortable. I hope this video has been helpful and serves as an encouragement to get out and shoot, tell your story, learn a little bit about the world around you and the people around you, and create some cool art. So, have a great day, stay safe out there, and peace and love to you all.
All right. Good evening, everybody. How we doing? Um, my name is Dave Issa. I am the manager of community engagement here at the Baltimore Museum of Art. You all have chimed into our Violet Hour, which, as we all know, everything we have going on right now is in response to COVID-19. So, Violet Hour is a biweekly online programming platform where we're hearing from Baltimore makers, creatives in this town about what they were doing before COVID, during COVID, and what we hope to see from them after. So tonight, I'm really excited to have photographer, educator here, Josh Sinn. Hello, Josh.
Hey,
How
how's
are
it
you?
going?
So I kind of want to start. We do have some questions and some comments happening while we were doing our video. Um, I do want to start off in one way, and then we'll get to some of those. Please, if you have any questions for Josh, even if you missed that video, many of you know his work from Instagram at Cadillac Ranch Dressing. We have seen his prolific output over the years, chronicling our city here. But as you can tell from what's happening outside, we did not just go for a walk. We pre-recorded this, right? And we actually pre-recorded this a couple months ago. To be honest, I'm not actually sure when because time has been interesting. So I'm just curious, Josh, in this moment, because we heard some of it back then from the voiceover you did over our video. But how are you doing as an educator, as an artist? What's going on? Everything in this world seems very fragile right now, and we all exist with our heads on swivels. But where are you in terms of both of those?
To be honest, I couldn't really tell you because honestly, like you're saying, things are changing all the time. And I feel like I'll have a good week where I'm feeling kind of optimistic. And then, whether it be new information or just new feelings, it kind of goes the other way. So, like, you know, kind of responding to like how our country is responding to COVID recently has just been kind of like it fooled me for a second. Like, I've always known how kind of serious this is, but then seeing people kind of normalize what's, the atmosphere, I was like, you know what, maybe things are getting better here. And then, I snap back into it. As an artist, I've definitely been going up and down. I think when we shot that, I was probably shooting the most out of all of the quarantine months. I think that time I was probably shooting more than I would say I shoot normally. Like I was kind of going at it because I thought this was going to be a shorter time, as I'm sure a lot of us did. And I guess like a lot of artists thought, okay, well, maybe I'll compile a lot of work during this time and maybe put a zine out or something. But this is becoming more of a, this might be a longer chapter in my book as an artist.
Right. Right. And I think what's interesting now is, like you're saying, we all thought, okay, this is going to be just a moment. Like, and I feel like in conversations I have with a lot of artists, the question is, what's your output right now? Like, what's your studio practice right now? Like, what's happening? And it's so varying, right? Because it's like, oh, I've got a couple weeks at home where I'm doing this, and then it's the existential, like, when am I going back? Like, how are you thinking even about your practice, not your practice, but your job as an educator and what that has done to all of this?
Well, that's also been, I think, maybe even scarier than being an artist or just a human right now.
Yeah.
So I teach art, like intro to art, and then I teach 3 levels of photography at the high school level. And I'm not terribly worried about a majority of the classes, but my photo 1 class, the intro photo class, is pretty much like strictly darkroom only. So we shoot film, we develop it, we print it in the darkroom, we do critiques, and that's where I think I have to really become creative in how to basically translate everything that a kid would learn in that class into something that can be distance learned or distance taught, because we're going to be at this, I guess, till January 28th is the day for my county, and then they'll reassess. But I get worried because I don't want my kids to think like this year is a wash, because the end of the year in spring, I think for teachers, families, and students, it was kind of like, at least we got the bulk of the year out of the way, and we got to have fun. We got to have our hands on with stuff. But man, those last 2 months were difficult. And the thought of almost an entire year being that way, I don't know. I have a lot to do with planning, and figuring out what will translate well and how can we get these kids learning without being hands-on as we used to be.
Yeah, I mean, that I think just hearing what you're saying there kind of goes naturally into this question from Paul Garber of a darkroom, right? Do you have a darkroom of your own? How do you get your film developed? And then also, I want to add to that. He also asked, because it must be hard with medium format, which you were shooting in the video. How do you talk about film, over Zoom with your students? So, like, how do you do it for yourself? And then how do you talk about this over Zoom?
So I'll start with myself. I don't have a darkroom of my own. I do have a darkroom in the high school that I teach at, which was pretty nice. If I ever wanted to throw off some prints or develop some film on my own, that was always great. I basically, at that point, was doing all of my own black and white film and taking my color C41 film to Full Circle. Here's a little plug for Full Circle Fine Art. Great. They are so good. They got printing, framing, scanning, developing. They have darkrooms of their own if you want to like rent one out for an hour or two. Really good people there. So I've been taking all my C41 and lately my black and white there too, because I've got a big bag of about 99 rolls of black and white film that has just been sitting there for about 2 or 3 years. Right now, like you were talking about my practice, if I'm not out shooting, I've got so much stuff to scan. There's more bags over there. I mean, it's kind of a wreck over here that I don't think I'll ever, without an intern, get this stuff fully scanned.
Plug it again.
Full Circle Fine Art.
Oh, no, not Full Circle. The intern.
Intern, if anybody wants to intern, scan these for me, because I've got a lot of it. But Yeah, it'd be nice. I think the longer this is going on, and I am kind of like scared of how this winter is going to be.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about, maybe, uh, you know, getting some money together and actually going full forward and start developing at home, just because it will save me a lot of money and a lot of time, and I'll have it right there. But that's another kind of mission.
That's a big move.
That's a big move, yeah. As far as talking to kids, talking to my students.
Josh, can I say one thing? Because I just heard a really large lightning strike. If we go out power-wise, folks, we're going to try to get back on. Stick with us.
Yeah. I wish it was looking like the day we went out on video. Dave, I think you froze on me. I'm going to assume that I can still be heard, but maybe not. Let me just check in with Dave real quick. So I'm just going to, I guess, talk in case you can't see Dave. Talking to my kids on talking to them about film over Zoom is going to be kind of weird, because like for a lot of kids, it's their first exposure to film. They've never, like, there's some kids where I ask the first day, who can tell me what film is? And they really have no idea. It's gotten better because film has been a little bit more popularized the last few years, and that's always a good sign. But, really getting how film is used and how important it can be in the process of learning, that's going to be a difficult one, strictly on Zoom or Google Meets that we use. So any type of virtual learning, it's going to be difficult to teach these hands-on processes. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. I'm gonna, because I think oh, hey Dave.
I think it's like I spoke it into existence.
Okay. Someone told me that they could hear me while I was talking, so I think I'm good. And oh, hold on. Hey,
Josh,
can you hear me?
I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Gotta love technology. Hey,
can you turn your mic off and then turn it back on?
All right.
It's in the bottom left of your screen.
All right, just muted and unmuted. Can you hear me?
Can't hear you, my friend.
Can't hear me. Can you hear me now?
So we're going to just try to do this in an interesting way. I'm not going to be able to hear what Josh is saying, but I'm just going to bring up some of the questions that people have been asking in the comments. And yeah, it seems like the audience can hear both of us, so that's good. I just can't hear what Josh says.
All right.
Lynn, thank you. Nice to have you here with us. And then Josh, when I see you stop talking, I'm just going to go to the next one. I'm sorry, it can't be like conversational anymore. But I think I spoke into existence the power going out.
Sounds
good.
So
Kevin Danaher asks, you seem to do a lot of buildings, photography involving buildings and landscapes. And have you considered doing any photo shoots for people? He's considering taking applications for people to photograph. And what do you think? Your work, I feel like he's hitting on something here, right? The most prevalent themes in your work, I feel like, are people, community, and then landscapes in Baltimore. So I guess, could we use Kevin's question here to maybe talk a little bit about those two themes?
Definitely. So I think when I first started photography, I was pretty shy. I was kind of a quiet kid at the beginning of it, and I used photography to kind of work my way back into, talking to people. But at first, I was going out at night doing a lot of long exposures of buildings, old cars, stuff like that, because you didn't really have to talk to many people. You'd get the occasional person seeing what you were doing, and then they'd want to know kind of what's up. But the people kind of started coming in later because I was just fascinated with humanity. I was fascinated with people's stories and just the way that people present themselves. And I think there's a good tell on the history of a place through the architecture, but also the people. And, especially with Baltimore, I wanted to learn about Baltimore my own way. I didn't want to learn about it through the news. I didn't want to learn about it through books or other people's experiences. I wanted to have my own experiences to really teach me what Baltimore meant to people. So, going out, walking around, you hear people talk, if I'm shooting a building, somebody come up and tell me a little bit about the history of that building, what it used to be, or who owns it now, or maybe their aunt lived 3 doors down and they used to be there all the time. So, it's a really cool way of getting in touch with the city. And I think there's the phrase, the social landscape, that I think has always interested me. Not just looking at something and being done with it, but being able to kind of get a little bit of culture or history from that landscape. And yes, I do shoot portraits of people, done a couple album covers for people, and always looking to do more. So yeah.
I've got to say, this is going to stand up as the most interesting conversation interview I've ever done, because I have no idea what you just said. But I'm sure it was amazing, because we've had these conversations many, many times just in the time that we've known each other. We're going to go to one from Ashley Pratt. Do you collaborate with other local photographers and educators to talk to your students? I guess, do you have folks coming in and speaking to your classes? Or also the question of, if you are going to be going down that very large road to build a dark room, what do you think you could do to share that process with your kids and other educators, other young photographers?
Well, definitely, I show a lot of work of peers and stuff, just to keep, I think I want to show that there is such a thing as a working photographer. Because kind of when I was coming up, people would reiterate to me as a young photographer that there's no work in photography, there's no work in art. You're going to be foaming at the mouth for a job. And I like to show the work and what people are doing to prove, hey, there's so many things that people can do within this industry. I haven't in the past had photographers and artists come in and talk, because the county makes it a whole thing. You got to basically do as much work as you would for a field trip for it. But I think as we approach this kind of new dawn of virtual teaching, I want to have people come in and speak through Zoom or Google Meets or whatever we're using, to talk to the kids, just to give their own stories and share their experiences. Because I think that's one way to really reach students in a new way, since we have this new kind of venture. As far as the darkroom process, it's hard to teach work ethic in art, because it's different for so many people. I think I shoot a lot more than a lot of people, but then there's a lot of people who shoot a lot more than me. I have a different way of going about scanning and archiving. As you can see, my archiving is just not that great. I can't tell you which month or even year some of these are from. So it's something that I think, you know, my work ethic is good for a certain type of person, but it's still good, you know, to see how other people work. So I think, you know, if I was to build a dark room, I could show kind of the length I go to for a print for my students, because I've had a lot of students kind of go in there, get the first print, and be done with it, and think that, you know, it works. And there's a lot of kind of testing the waters, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't, to make a good print. So, you know, I think I would try and show work ethic a little bit through that.
So we've actually worked out a workaround during that, and somebody just called me, so I was able to actually listen in to what you were saying. And I'm going to pose the next question and then have them call me back, so maybe we can get a little bit more back and forth. Thank you, Josh, for going down this road with me very flexibly.
I could also call you.
So for Pat McQuaid, we have a question. Has your process as a photographer changed drastically in relation to this pandemic? If so, has it also shifted your narrative? And what I'm also interested in hearing is when we talk about those two things that are very prevalent in your work, when you think about how your work may have changed drastically, like what has that done to the community, your relationship to the community of Baltimore and also to the city during this pandemic?
It's definitely, well, I'll preface this by saying I think my work's gotten a little bit more personal the last 2 years. I used to be like strictly, and probably not the healthiest thing, but like strictly not personal. I was kind of objective in a way. I like to kind of be the, not the silent viewer, but I didn't really want the work to be about me. It would just be about my experiences. But the older I got, I felt that I think it's kind of unhealthy to have that separation between artist and art, because that would kind of say like I didn't care about the people I was photographing or care about the places that I was photographing if I was to take myself completely out of it. So I think, you know, and I did this on a few road trips the past few summers where, you know, it was to kind of refine my vision as an artist, look at myself in different ways. Last year, I went on a solo road trip to Montana, which was probably the most like personal my work has been yet. So shifting that into, you know, quarantine time during COVID, I've had to basically kind of think about how every photo reflects me. So like there are photos that I've taken that I don't think anybody would actually understand without maybe the context of other photos or a, you know, a caption or me talking about it, because it's only something that truly like makes sense to me at the time. So I'm becoming a lot more of a personal photographer, not out of just necessity, but just out of want. But it is something that, you know, out of necessity, I do kind of have to do. I'm seeing less people. I'm out and about less, especially the last few months, just trying to like be a little bit more, not just more concerned about myself, but I don't want to put people in a perspective or put them in a position where, you know, oh, some strangers coming up to talk to me during a pandemic. You know, it's weird, and I want to make sure that like I'm not making anybody feel uncomfortable. So yeah, I think a lot has changed. I think it's gonna stay that way, or at least keep going in that direction after this. I like to, you know, kind of pose this as a when this is done type of way, but you know, who knows? But yeah, I think there's a lot of ways that my relationship with the city too. Like actually, I took a drive the other day, 2 days ago, for the first time, like just driving around the city, being in parts that I hadn't been in months. And it felt so weird. It felt like I wasn't even in Baltimore all this time, and I just traveled to Baltimore because it's been so long. But yeah, maybe that answers the question.
So I have like a 10-second delay as you're hearing. I think what we should do, I've got one more question for you. And I just want to also thank everybody for bearing with us of this time. But as I was just hearing you talking about how it's kind of affected how you approach people in this pandemic, right? And we noticed in the video, the UPS driver, like, we're not going to talk about like some of the conversation that he just threw at you and I as you're walking around with the camera, or that older gentleman who was an engineer, I think, then now is a photographer in his retirement. But could you maybe close us out with some, either one or a couple interesting stories or interesting people that you have met in a very serendipitous way out shooting?
Okay.
That have either been a very small and short and quick experience or something that's grown into a longer relationship?
Well, I think so I did a lot of shooting of the response, the protests following Freddie Gray's death, and that work has always really resonated with me to this day. In many different forms, my connection to the city and where I fit in as a white man, photographing a predominantly Black city. But that was the most educational time for me. And I think like that's how I look at this. I look at it as an education. So some of the most enriching conversations or connections I've had with people were people just trying to, make someone understand, what their life is like. Like I met somebody in Sandtown. I don't even think I don't have a portrait of her. We were just talking, and she was a nurse, and I think she worked down at Mercy, one of the hospitals downtown. And I remember her telling me that it took her about 2.5 hours to get from Sandtown to the hospital every day just to get to work. And how, different our experiences within the city based on privilege and based on what we have, how different our worlds are in the same city. We're separated only by a few miles, if even a mile. And, I think that's something that's always stuck with me, is the way that this city is a beautiful, beautiful city, but there's a lot of things that can be done to make sure that we're all covered, not just parts of it. So just learning about the history or the present history of places from people, those have been some of the most enriching. So that's one that stands out. I'm trying to, there's been a lot. One of the best days I ever had was the Palm Sunday before, I think it was Palm Sunday in 2015, maybe it was 2014, but it was a beautiful day, and I was photographing on North Ave and Penn Ave, and it was just like so many people were so inviting. Like sometimes you gotta like talk to people to make them feel okay with the camera, but it was a special day that like everybody was in a good mood. Everybody was dressed to the T. Everybody's wearing, the suits, the crowns, everything. And it was just, it made me feel at home in Baltimore, and glad that I have a tool like a camera to, have that connection. Because, I think a lot of people don't have a reason sometimes to get outside of their comfort zone. And the camera is that for me. And I think a few people might agree with that. Or, again, like the point of the video is kind of getting people connecting to the community in a different way by, going out and shooting things, talking to people that they normally wouldn't. Because I think there is a beauty that photography can bring that to some people. So again, like, I guess a good way to tie that into the video.
So I think for what it's worth, it's been a pretty interesting night hanging with Josh. Appreciate you so much, Josh, for coming on with us and all the time we spent distance to create something in response to COVID. Folks, we want to pose to you as you're going on your distance walk throughout your day, on your lunch break, enjoying after work, whatever. Submit your photos to us. I think what we got to see from Josh is a really interesting way of looking at space, looking at things you may walk by every day. So submit those to us on Instagram or on Facebook. We'd love to see them. Also, I just want to plug the next BMA Violet Hour is going to be Wednesday, August 26th. We're going to be speaking with Nia Hampton and the Black Femme Supremacy Film Fest. That should be really exciting. For everything else, BMA, check us out at artbma.org. We sadly still are closed and not able to welcome you back into our doors. We can't wait until we can. But until then, we've got plenty of stuff for you online to check out. Thank you all. Josh, do you have anything to say?
No, just stay safe. Make some art if you can. But mainly stay safe, love one another. I think the city is a beautiful, beautiful place, and we need to treat it as such. So, yeah.
I have no idea what you just said, but thank you all. Nicoletta, have you been there the whole time? Folks, thank you. Have a great rest of your night.
Thank you for coming.
Stay safe. It seems like the weather is crazy out there, and we'll see you soon.
All right. Thank you, Dave.